Do you think there's a mentality in North America where we actually just take it less seriously because we don't have as much history with esports as, say,
What
like
the
Europe or
heck?
Korea?
I never think the reasoning is because Western culture is less serious. I think if you look at the hours players put in, they literally would match, especially for boot camps and for like prep before, they would definitely match. I just feel like the infrastructure is better, so they're more efficient. Or as well as it's not just like an end of the game thing. It's not like you go to a boot camp and you try to make yourself 20 times better than you normally are in the boot camp. Their practice regimen throughout the year is streamlined and efficient so that all they have to do when they hit the finish, like the steps before the finish line, is keep doing what they're doing, what they've been doing throughout the year because it's already good and you don't need to add too much on top of it to make yourselves a great team. You're already practicing and becoming a great team doing what you're already doing, which I think that a lot of Western like coaches are still trying to find out the optimal ways to make a schedule, make all these coaching solutions that what their philosophy could be at the start of the year changes multiple times as the year progresses. In Korea, they just have a lot of benefits to be able to find and nurture talent. Like, okay, their internet's better. Geographically, it's better for them as well. But you don't join the challenger team in Korea. What you do is you just climb the solo queue ladder. And if you get good enough, you get noticed by some of the players. Teams like SKT will give you an invite. They'll be like, okay, well, you have like an interview. And if you pass the first step, the interview process, they will invite you to their team house so that you can practice with them. Or like you could do like 1v1s, so like they can see you in person and see how you perform. And that's only possible because 95% of the player base, 90% of the Korean player base lives in one city, Seoul. Not only is it incredibly wide, like you can get anywhere with the subway. So let's say I went to do that, where 50% of the challenger ladder lives in Southern California. I would have to be paying a hell of a lot more because I can't, like, subway rides in Korea are really cheap, whereas if I wanted to taxi people all the way to like the Dig House or the COG House, it would cost me like $100 each way. It's just so much more convenient for them to be like, okay, just take like a 30-minute subway ride and then get off at this stop and then come by our house and then we'll see how you do. Where in LA, I can really not do that, even though I would really, really want to. So that's like the benefits of geographically. I feel like they have a lot of benefits for having people and so many people play the game in such a small area that's really, really well connected in terms of internet. Like they have history and years of experience of how to coach esports. So they are like really far ahead in the curve in terms of that. Whereas first generation coaches like me had to learn everything from the ground up. And so a lot of the mistakes that I make are stuff that new coaches won't make because it's like really obvious. It's like, oh, you just shouldn't do that. Or like, oh, the solution to that is just this. Whereas like I had to learn from like trial and error. If it's a problem, it's not a problem where it's like just the U.S. takes it like that. Like if you look toward China, all the interviews are like, what happened between the big teams where they integrate Korean players is that the Korean player training mentality, which is essentially just to grind games nonstop, motivated the Chinese players to play more. The shelf life of a player is so low, 2 years. You don't really ever have to worry too much about burning out. Or in terms of mental health, it's important, but it's most important to make the best player in the shortest amount of time. And so I can encourage everyone to grind their brains out 14, 16 hours a day to become the best player. And there could be a chance of burnout. They could be like, within like 1 to 2 years, they could just like hate the game. Or they could just like be completely burned out of the game. But I don't think that matters to some people because if you can create the best player in under a year or inside a year for Worlds, that's all that really matters. And I think that that's like really a really harsh mentality to have when it comes to developing talent.
Do we want to take world championship placements literally and say that Fnatic is like a top four, like they're either third, well, they're third, they're basically the third best team in the world right now? Or do you have maybe a different opinion of that?
I think they're like a top 5 team. I think Origin overperformed to get to semis, and Fnatic is probably a more consistent team overall. I think that Fnatic is a great team, probably the best chance a Western team had of winning Worlds in a long time. I realistically
Yeah.
put them in top 4, and I thought that they would beat Coup Tigers. Like, I really did. And after the first game, which set the pace or the tone of the best of 5, it really, I never think the first game is the most important. A lot of people think that. I always think the second game is the most important. Because to me, the first game is whatever. The first game, both teams come in with a good idea of what the other person is going to do. Adaptation comes in at like kind of maybe a minimum based on just what the draft you see, but all the prep comes in on the first game, and then you just throw your stuff on the board, and you're like, okay, go. You come in with your best blue side strat, he comes in with his best purple side strat, with expectations pretty much shelled out, and then after the first game, you're like, shit, what worked? What didn't work? We have less than 15 minutes, less than 10 minutes to be able to adapt correctly. And the draft I see the second game, and then the like mentality, the play I see in the second game means a lot more to me than what I see in the first game. By the way, just as a side note, the most impressive mid laner for me to watch this Worlds has been Fabivin. I think he performed. I knew he was like a really good mid laner from MSI, from his split performance, but what he pulled out this Worlds, I thought was fantastic. Like he definitely, like, I don't want to say blew me away, but he was impressive to say the least. And I think that outside of him, no one else really kind of topped expectations quite the way that he did for me. Maybe it's because I don't watch enough of the European scene, and Maple comes at like maybe a second place for me, but him and Maple were definitely the two surprises of the tournament for me. Excuse me, in terms of mid lane. I would really love it if Q won. It would be fantastic, but
It would be a wicked upset.
for me, I think Smeb is a better top laner for sure. I think that Faker and Izun are both better mid laners, so it's like a really weird match.
Who carries harder?
Yeah,
Basically.
I think Marin though can play tanks really, really well, and he's been going off on this tournament. I think Marin and Smeb are the two most impressive top laners at Worlds so far, and to meet up like this, I think that, yeah, it's going to be like a 3-0 because Marin can deal with Smeb with like a small deficit, and Kuro can't deal with Izun or Faker with a small deficit. I think he's going to get rolled over. Except for when he's on like Victor or something, I guess.
SKT don't really have to do anything. Anything special. You know, they're kind of the guys on the hill saying, okay, come at us.
Well,
Do what you want.
Well, Coup Tigers is known for like losing the early game and then making up for it by just making great team plays mid and late game to be able to recover from a losing early game. But SKT, when they get the lead, they don't give it up. It's a chokehold. They just bring you down and you die. Like, and so I think that it's gonna be really. I think it's gonna be pretty one-sided, but I will be excited to see the results.
Yeah.